Paltrocast. How is your day going aside from being in an executive suites in and talking to this guy?
Yeah, I think we're right outside of DC today, so this is about as good as it gets because everything's very expensive around here. But
It is. It's one of those cities that's expensive, DC, that people don't talk about being expensive, hence all the lobbyists being there, et cetera. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about you and your greatness here.
yeah,
Blue
dude,
October, Harvard of the South, you as, a sideman for a trillion things, you as a producer and a songwriter, your own band, et cetera. How do you want to be identified at this point in time? Do we just say that musician guy?
that's a really good question, man. I feel like I wear a lot of hats, and I don't know what the right title for that is. So like, I always, whenever I do like a speaking event or something like that, they're like, "Okay, well, what do we put on your name tag?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm a musician, I guess. I don't know." So I actually do a little bit of management as well. I'm getting my feet back into that again. So, um, man, I don't know. Music
Music
business guy. We'll just call
business.
it that.
And when it comes to you as a producer, you're very prolific. I say that because the average, if you look at, say, a Desmond Child producer discography, you'll see one album a year. In your case, while doing Blue October, there's like 5 to 8 a year. So is
Yeah.
it the second that you're not on the road, you're back in the studio?
Yeah, I don't, and I always joke about this, but it really is the truth. I don't have any hobbies. I just don't. Like I like to kayak, and I have 3 kids, which is awesome. So I spend as much time with my kids as I possibly can. But I tend to be a workaholic when I get home. I always joke that when I'm on tour, I'm like, oh, let's book a tour so I can get some rest, so I can sleep in a little bit. When I'm home, there's no rest at all because if I don't have my kids, not up at 6 a.m. And then head into the studio. Like, I don't know what to do with myself. I go out of my skull, honestly. So I love staying busy. And not only that, like, I think that if it all felt like work, it might be different. But making records is what I consider fun. That's what I would do if I had a 9 to 5 job. At 5:30, I would be going to have fun and make records afterwards. So I just happen to be able to be like lucky enough to do it for a living, you know.
Well, to name check your bandmate, one Steve Schiltz,
Yes.
the story goes that he took his royalties from the Twilight New Moon soundtrack and then invested in a bunch of gear. In your case, when did you get all the gear to be able to have your own studio?
Yeah, I'm really, really blessed in that department. So I have a partner with the studio at Award Recording Studios in Austin. Um, and he and I, so when we kind of put our vision together and started talking about this, like, geez, now it was 11, 12 years ago, when like kind of the idea started forming. He really believed in what the idea was, and seeing me produce so much and seeing me work with so many artists, that he was really willing to put a lot of resources into it. And then I kind of was, my role was really at the beginning was like, hey, I'm going to really figure out how to sort of, crack the code and get our name out there and kind of get established and make sure that the first year really gets us on the map.
Mhm.
It's just really difficult to do. It's not easy to do. A lot of things kind of fell in our favor the first year for sure, which helped us launch. But I just got really lucky in that sense where I wasn't pressured necessarily to like, oh, I got to completely like drain my savings and do everything I can to, build the studio and build this thing up. But in that regard, over the 10 years that we've been open, there's been a lot of pressure to like, keep it going and make sure, because there's so much maintenance with the studio. Gear
Yeah.
breaks, especially vintage gear, so if we don't stay busy, we can't fix things. We can't do those things. So it's been a balancing act for sure, just making sure that everything's flowing and it's moving in a good way. But I got really lucky, I really did. And I admire Steve's story so much because it's true. It's 100% true. And I love that. I love that he just like bet on himself 100%.
Yeah. In the case of your studio, is it a mix of digital and analog or mostly digital?
No, it's a mix for sure. In fact, what's kind of unique about us is we have 3 different rooms. So a lot of studios are like, we have one, we have like, or maybe 2 rooms. We have 1 or 2 rooms. And we have, a console in this room and then a different console in this room. And this has this vibe and this has this vibe. And there's some studios that do that and they do it very well. But what I like about our studios, to me, it's kind of like Goldilocks and the Three Bears. It's like you have 3 different sizes with different things to offer, and it's like one step up, you know, and but they're all like kind of appropriate for what the artist is and what the artist wants to do, because you know that in this day and age a producer is not what a producer was 20 years ago. It's not,
Right.
you know, I'm going to hire a band and we're all going to set up and, you know, spend 3 hours getting tones. And a lot of times now we have producers that come in and they bring their laptop in and they've got, you know, an Ableton, you know, session set up and ready to go, and they're doing vocals. So we have an A room, a B room, and a C room, and they're all different sizes, and they have completely different vibes from one to the next. And so I think that that's been good, because when people come and see it in person, they're like, oh, this like it sort of has something to offer everybody.
Yeah.
You know, instead of just like, hey, it's just this one thing. Maybe you like it, maybe you don't.
Well said. Well, speaking of different vibes, you're one of the few people whose discography includes both Bumblefoot and DMC.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Oh man, I don't even know where to start with that. Like, first of all, DMC, I grew up on Run DMC. I used to drive like crazy.
There's DMC like dolls about.
Oh yeah,
that way.
the
Yeah.
Funko Pops. You got the Funkos of DMC. That's great.
Are they the? They're like little. I don't know if they're the Funko Pops,
Yeah.
but it was a good promo item. But Daryl's the nicest.
Oh my God, he's the best.
Yeah.
He's the sweetest guy ever. He really is. He's like such a humble, genuine guy. Like, he really kind of just gives you hope. Like, working with somebody that legendary and seeing like, man, this guy is just such a sweetheart, you know, like really makes you realize that there are good people in the business, you know, and
Yeah.
there's just hope, you know. So working with him was definitely like, I can die now kind of moment, you know, like I'm good, you know. I actually gave me one of his hats, and I have it above, like when you walk into the office at the studio, I have it hanging up right next to a picture of the two of us together. And that to me is like, I'm just so proud of that. I love like being able to work with him. And I had my buddy Kenny Olson come in and play guitar on the song, and they knew each other from back in the day. And then Bumblefoot, I actually produced, he played on a song for me for my record that I'm doing with my friend Alan Adams called Icarus Bell. He played a solo. And then he and I produced a 2-piece Israeli band together, and called Doties. And it was such a cool experience, because he's such a cerebral, kind of quiet, but then when he says something, it's so profound that you're like, man, I've been talking for 20 minutes and not saying anything. You know, this guy's just brilliant. So being able to work with both those guys, honestly, like, just really, really crowning achievements, honestly.
Did you ever hear Bumblefoot's alter ego, the lounge singer? I think his name is Checkers.
No, I'm not familiar. You're giving me some material I got to go check out. This is great.
Yeah, he had played for me some lounge tribute albums that he'd done. I don't know if they were commercially released or thing, but it was him singing Miss Jackson by Outkast, but as a crooner.
So is it like a Richard Cheese kind of
entirely a Richard Cheese, and you'd never think that he has that kind of sense of humor or musicality, but he can sing, that guy. Everyone talks about him as a shredder, but drummer, singer.
No, he's phenomenal. He in fact, I've seen some videos of him doing when he did some stuff with Toto, and he was doing some vocals and guitars, and I was just like, this guy's unreal, man. He's so talented. He's so good. And again, a really genuine, down to earth, humble dude, you know. So it must be an East Coast thing.
Well, you're originally from Michigan, right? And then you moved down to Texas for Blue October?
I did, yeah. I kind of just said F it and packed up my little Volkswagen car and moved down there, because I saw the band live and I was just blown away. You know, it's like, you know, when people get in the music business and they ask about like whether they're an artist or a manager or whatever, I think that they ask questions sometimes if they need a mentor looking for logical answers. And sometimes you can't give people logical answers, because it's just not a logical business. It's all based on instincts. It's all just based on a feeling, you know? And so to me, when I saw the band, I just knew it was something special. And I just knew, like, I had that that was intangible thing that I was like, I can't tell you exactly what it is. I can't put it into words, but I just know that this is like a genuine, a real artist singing from the heart, and this is something that I gotta be a part of. I have to do this, you know. So I broke my lease and I moved down, and I've been there ever since.
So Blue October, is a newish discovery for me. I think 5, 6 years ago, I saw you at the Highline Ballroom in New York City. And that is a venue that maybe at its best holds 1,800 people. And there's
Yeah.
probably 2,200 people in that venue. And then
Remember,
you look and you go, wait, this is an arena band in some parts of the country, a theater band in other parts of the country. Is it every gig you kind of don't know what to expect at this point, whether it's an arena or a theater?
it's funny that you say that because the last show we've been doing theaters. The last tour and this tour mostly seated, very beautiful venues, kind of historic theaters with a really just kind of you're trying to get a similar vibe from show to show. And then the last show we did was all general admission standing rock show, where everybody's like this and pressed up against the barricade again. And it was like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, we do this sometimes too, So um I feel like that's one thing about us though, is we have so much material and we have such a kind of a theatrical vibe already that it really translates to those shows. We can definitely do the festival rock thing. We've played arenas, we've done, opening for big acts, played for like 70,000 people in Quebec or something. This outdoor, actually we did it twice. And once was with Kiss, and it was just like, it was people as far back as you can see. And I feel like we really held our own and we did really well. But I gotta say that the theater vibe is probably my favorite. It took some adjustment to like, okay, people are seated, they're not going nuts. Of course, people in the front are standing, and by the end, everybody's standing. But I love the whole just being able to put on a show without it having to be super high energy all the time. It can kind of take you through all the emotions and be, more of a roller coaster, which
Right.
I really do.
Is it true from hanging out with Gene Simmons that when you go with Gene, you get the green?
It's 100% true. Gene is not that's not a character, man. That's who he is.
I
Like
know.
that's who he is. And I
Yeah.
grew, I'm 47. I have a brother, an older brother who's a drummer. He's 4 years older than me. So like every Halloween picture is we're Kiss, we're members of Kiss, whatever. Like it was Kiss cereal and Kiss dolls, and I remember
Yeah.
getting his
I'm
card.
I'm sorry to cut you off, but Michigan was the first state to embrace Kiss, not New York.
Cadillac, Michigan, man. They
Yeah.
played the high school prom or homecoming or something, and
Yeah.
and you'll go into restaurants in Cadillac and they have pictures from that in the 70s all over the place, So it was just such a like a way of life. It was just such a cultural phenomenon growing up. Like Kiss was so bigger than everything growing like when I was a kid, that when we played with them, it carried so much weight. So the first thing I did, I met Doc McGee, who is awesome, met Paul Stanley, met all the other guys, and then Gene and I talked, and they were having some sound issues, so they went on like 15 minutes late. So I'm talking to Gene in full costume for like 15 minutes before it goes on. The whole time I'm just like, just act normal, just act normal, just act normal. And then the conversation ends, and the first thing I did is I beelined to the dressing room and I called my brother, and I was like, I just got done having a 15-minute conversation with Gene Simmons in full costume, and he was like, I hate you. You don't deserve that. But it was amazing, and he's so larger than life. It's just like that's who he is. You go with Gene, you get the green. It's like he's got like he rhymes constantly. It's crazy.
So that story has been substantiated. Thank you very much for that. And so,
Yeah, that's true.
but Blue October, it's impressive how busy the band has been over the last 5, 6 years. There's been a live album and/or a studio album every year. Now, if there's 13 songs on a Blue October record, did you write 13 or is it pared down from 20-ish?
Oh, it's always pared down. Always. Yeah, no, we've never, and I've done a lot of records. I've produced a lot of albums where it's like, guys, we need one more song. We need one more song. It is the polar opposite with Blue October. And that's because there's always so much material. I mean, and especially now more than ever, because Justin has a really nice home studio, and it's separate building, separate facility, but it's a beautiful studio. And Eric Holtz, who's kind of, the extra member of our band, is pretty much there every day, and they're working constantly. So I'll get an email and I'm like, here's like 4 more demos. And I'm like, oh my God, these are all amazing. When did you do this? It's like, oh yeah, hold on. There's 4 more coming, here's a file of 10 that I forgot to show you. It's kind of mind blowing. Honestly, it just never ends. The guy just doesn't stop writing, and when we're on the road, it's saying we'll be in the dressing room and 3-4 days in a row, before sound check, he's working on a song, he's in there working on something. So we always have to like kind of weed out the songs that don't fit that album, what the vibe of that album is, and then go, okay, maybe some of these we'll save for later, but
Mhm.
get it down to, the proper LPs, whatever that is, 10 songs, 12, 13 songs, whatever it is. And then put that album out. COVID presented a whole other thing because there was so much time to write and there's so much time to reflect and there's so much going on that the output was insane. So instead of having, okay, here's an album, we're going to do a regular album cycle and tour, then we'll go do another album. We have 3 parts to this album. We have Spinning the Truth Around Part 1, Part 2, which comes out in October, and then we'll have a Part 3, which are remixes of all these songs from the album. So, I mean, if that's not a testament to the fact that the dude just never stops working, I don't know what is.
Yeah.
But it's always whittling the songs down for sure.
So you have your studio, he has his studio, Steve has his studio. So it's 3 proper studios in a band. I don't think most stadium acts have 3 members with proper studios and gear setups.
If we can't come up with enough material for an album between the 3 of us, we're just lazy, or just something ain't working, but yeah, there's no, and now with Steve playing with us, full time, like there's definitely no shortage of great material for sure. He's such a prolific writer.
So when you write something and it doesn't make the cut in Blue October, does it go in the garbage, the posthumous box set, or does it go to one of your other projects?
I would say it does. I try not to so it's not that I write things with the intention of it being something necessarily. I'll write something and I almost instantly know what it's going to work for. I can just tell like right away from the melody or the bass line or the guitar part or whatever it is. I'm like, this fits with my thing, or this definitely feels like this could be a Blue October song. And generally, I'm also not sending, tons and tons of demos to Justin. I'll know if it feels right. And I'd say 9 times out of 10, we wind up putting it on the album. Like I don't send a lot of material, but I make sure it's the right material, and so it will wind up on the record. Usually there's only been maybe a handful of songs that we didn't wind up doing, honestly, because I think I have pretty good instincts when it comes to that. Like I know like this is definitely feels like something Justin's going to dig, or he's going to be able to really put a great melody to, or whatever that is, or he can do the lyrics and or he he can write a chorus to the verse or whatever that is.
Right.
And then I know just stylistically like this feels more like my project kind of thing.
Well, I've got 3 more questions for you. 2 are going to be stupid, presumably quick ones, and then the other one,
There
it's
are
your
no stupid questions.
Okay. Here's the first one. You're a Michigan guy. Are you one of those Interlochen people?
Ooh, that's not a, is that one of the stupid questions? Because that's not a stupid question
That's
at
a
all.
stupid question because I find regionally, if you were at least halfway talented and you grew up in Michigan, you went to Interlochen.
Yeah. So, okay. So I actually was offered a scholarship to go to Interlochen and I didn't do it. It was not for music. It was for art. It was for graphic or visual art. Sorry. And I knew just, I love painting and drawing and commercial art, but I also knew that that's not what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. So, and I think I had some really stupid reasons too. Like I probably was dating some girl or something. I was like, I can't leave her. I love her. So I stayed at this little Catholic school in Traverse City that I went to. And I stayed with my friends and I didn't go. I didn't do it. I was a freshman in high school. And I'm not mad that I did that because I'm very happy with the path that I chose, right? But
Right.
I had a lot of friends that went to Interlochen. The Interlochen kids were the super artsy, I could go on and on.
Oh, in New York, here on Long Island, we have this camp called Usedan, which Mariah Carey went to as a kid and Steve Stevens went to. And it's like a junior Interlochen kind of thing. It's different levels of talented. I get it. It's performing arts that can be a little smug.
Yeah, yeah. So, but I did have a lot of friends that went to Interlochen, and I was like, I felt, like I was exposed to a lot of good music from my Interlochen friends because they were like always going against the grain. It was like, oh, we don't listen to Gin Blossoms, that's mainstream. So but I really did, and I actually still have a family. Our family, my grandparents' old house, is kind of our shared family spot, and it's in Interlochen. So every summer or every other summer, I go up there, and I'm there. So I'm kind of an Interlochen kid. to a degree by proxy, but nah, not 100%.
This is not the second question there. You just said Gin Blossoms. And the wife and I went to the singer's lawn concert. He performs for his neighbors just as a
Oh,
goodwill
wow.
local community gesture. And Gin Blossoms, possibly the greatest mainstream band and the most credible band that
Yeah.
nobody talks about as being a great or a credible band.
And great songwriting too, man. A lot of those songs, like back in the 90s, I didn't know, like, Hey Jealousy, songs like that. I was like, I just kind of didn't pay a lot of attention to. And then we did some shows with them. I'm like, hey,
Oh,
these guys are like, yeah, we played some festival shows with them. Super nice dudes, like very humble, have been around the block. They know what they're doing. Um, but really, really nice guys. And I kind of had a whole new appreciation for them after that. I went and did a deep dive and I was like, I was missing out. Two bands that I was really missing out in the 90s, and probably because they were just everywhere. So I was like, I can't listen to that because
right. You're punk rock. Yeah.
yeah, man, I gotta be punk rock. Third Eye Blind, Gin Blossoms. And listening back now, I'm like, there are some freaking great songs by both of these bands that I just did not give a chance, and I should have. But not that they needed my extra one album sold. I'm sure they did just fine.
Yeah. Stupid question number two. Again, Michigan guy, rock guy who can play other genres. Any run-ins with anyone from the Bissonette family?
Oh gosh, you mean like Matt and Greg Bissonette?
Matt, Greg, then I think Kathy's with AEG, and I think there's another musical Bissonette or two out there.
I didn't know that. No. So the only reason that again, I have an older brother and he's a drummer, so I know, David Lee Roth's original, solo band was like one of the greatest bands ever. Billy
Ever.
Steve Vai, Greg Bissonette. So I'm familiar with Greg and Matt just from being, having an older brother who always had his ear to the ground. But other than that, no, I haven't really had any run-ins with them. I'd like to.
I just figured everyone from Michigan knows each other. Forget the fact that it's one of the geographically biggest states in the US. You just go, well, I mean, they know Grand Funk Railroad and everyone hangs out and they go to Interlochen.
Well, yeah, actually, so funny Grand Funk Railroad story, if I got time, if that's cool.
Sure.
So when I was in high school, Battle of Bands was a big deal, right? It was a huge thing. So I was my band, I don't even know what band it was, like every band I was in had like the dumbest name ever. So it was just pick a dumb name and that's what we were. But we did a lot of kind of bass centric material, so it was a lot of Jane's Addiction and Primus and stuff like that. And there was a bass player, really, really nice kid that was in one of the other bands. And he was like, hey, man, I really like the way you play. I'd love to sit down and play together sometime. Do you want to come over? It was Mel Shocker's son.
Oh,
Yeah. And I'm like, and I learned all this later. And I'm like, wait a minute, I'm putting two and two together. I'm like, why does this guy have gold platinum records on his wall? And whoa, that's Grand Funk Railroad bass player. And then Mark Farner, I think, lived in Traverse City for a while as well. So,
yeah.
look, the scene is not big. It is a big state, but the music scene is tiny. We all know each other. Everybody knows everybody. The Verve Pipe guys to the Kid Rock guys to, like everybody everybody has crossed paths at some point for sure.
And the non-stupid rather, quick question before I let you go is, what are you plugging besides the new Blue October record and the part 3 that's coming out in the near future being on tour? Is there anything we should be looking for specifically from you, Matt?
Absolutely. So yeah, so obviously our record's coming out, next month, and then we'll have the part 3 coming out. I don't know the date on part 3 yet, but that should be coming out soon. And I finally finished the Icarus Bell record, which is myself and Alan Adams, and then again Bumblefoot, Lucas Rossi, Static, Jeff Friedel from Perfect Circle plays on a song with us. We have a bunch of our friends that just kind of Steve Schiltz. Bunch of people cameoed on this record, and it's so fun. It was such a fun kind of like, let's just get all of our buddies on these songs and have fun, and kind of it's kind of a throwback to some degree to some of our 90s influences, so a lot of like heavy kind of bass and drum work with the vocals are definitely secondary. But I'm really proud of the record, and it's finally done. I got the last 3 songs, the vocals finished when I was home before this tour started. The last songs are getting mixed right now. It's going into mastering. And then, so I think we're shooting for like December, January to put the album out. We're going to have vinyl. So the Icarus Bell record, after 4 years of trying to squeeze it in between tours. It's finally done. Really proud of it. Can't wait for it to come out.
And the best way to find out about the release dates, is it the Instagram? Is it the
It would be the Instagram.
Facebook? Okay.
Yeah, I would say the Instagram. We're not very active on Facebook or anything else. So Al and I are both a couple, older dudes trying to we're both like, how does this work? So our Instagram is definitely like where we would keep everybody, posted. And we do have a Patreon as well. And on our Patreon, we do a lot of engaging with our Patreon folks and make sure that they get like exclusive songs that other people haven't had access to, etc. We did a Tori Amos cover, which is really fun, and just kind of feeding content to them as a thank you for helping us out.
Well, I'm not going to top that. So thank you for your time. Thank you for the many years of great music. Looking forward to the next gig in the New York area. Just keep being Matt, will you?
Thanks, man. I appreciate it, dude. It's really good talking to you. Thank you.
Paltrocast.